steering wheel. Lobster steering wheel, yeah. Give him steering wheel. Hey, steering wheel. Somebody tell him to give it to him. Come on! Whoa!
Do that, can I please? Do that hip.
How the f*** is that possible?
I'm driving like a grandma. Get that, Ralph? Did you hear me? Proper radio. Ralph, acknowledge. Now, come on, close him down and kill him. We've got a lunatic on the track. Down that mistake.
I am so annoyed.
Boys and girls, your attention, please.
Hello and welcome back inside the Park for May for podcast number 984, the Japanese Grand Prix review. You know what we do on race weekends?
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Tom.
Seems logical to me. I mean, why wouldn't we do that? And there's a lot to talk about, of course, but before getting into the race review that was the Japanese Grand Prix, we do have to bring in my co-host, and you know what that means. Some people, I've heard him referred to as Paul Superclip Charsley, but I really don't think that's his actual middle name. You know who it is.
Rex from out of the way, sir. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charsley, the International.
It happens to be the sporting manager of the Heart of Racing Aston Martin team in IMSA here in the United States of America. Paul, how you doing?
Sir, I'm good. Actually, funny thing, I was just as we were coming on, it had a little label on top of the screen saying actual recording is of higher quality. So that explains a lot.
Oh, it does.
You know, because, I speak words and they're very simple, maybe not in very interesting words, but then when we replay the podcast, I sound better. So I sound more intelligent. So it's higher quality.
Perfect.
So we could just call this in and it's going to turn out great.
We could be monosyllabic during this cast and it wouldn't matter. You know?
It wouldn't matter. It's going to be, they're going to fix it. These
They're going to hear you say,
amazing.
yes, these regulations are imponderable. Yes. Oh, boy, Paul. The Japanese Grand Prix. All right. Have we had enough?
I've had enough.
I've had
enough.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that the Japanese Grand Prix has gone by, which is one of our favorites.
It is. It is.
Right?
It is. It is. I've been watching this sport, and I've been podcasting on this sport for 20 years. Mm-hmm. I've been watching this sport since I was a wee little boy. I fell in love with the Lotus 72, and I'm about as disinterested as I've ever been, and that's a shame.
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're, look, for all you newer fans and wherever you stand, I'm just telling you, I've been watching this for decades and, I'm up to here with it. So let's jump in. I do want to level set this to the race weekend.
That was a bit of a downer, by the way. Everyone's like,
was it really?
Yeah, I was like, why am I going to listen to this guy? He doesn't even freaking like the sports.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, it's there's things to glean out of it. It's not like it's not interesting to watch. We just know it can be better, And
that's just it.
And I think they can fix it. They just have to fix it.
Well, yes, and that's what I'm hanging my hat on. The fact is that this is the pinnacle of motorsport. It should be flat out. And when you're downshifting in 130R, there's a problem.
Right.
And when you're regenerating, going slow in high-speed corners, that's a problem. So major concerns. Now, the upside, what I'm hanging my hat on, is that Formula One happens to also be stuffed to the gills with some very, very smart people. Very smart people in these teams. And my hope is that they will see what's going on and cure the regulations and tweak it to where it is a better series. So, but it's such a delicate balance because they've got these Indian manufacturers, the whole, some of them, their whole reasons they're there is for this kind of thing where, the hybrid power unit development and all the R&D, and I get all that, but we're literally to the point where software is controlling both the car and the driver, and that for me is a real problem.
Yeah. So we know that in the press, the teams aren't as critical, but I know behind the scenes I think
For
they
sure.
share a like-mindedness, but they've got to protect their sport too. So
they run the risk of alienating a whole throng of people that they worked really hard to get, and they know that risk.
Yeah, and it's not like all the people back at each factory isn't working hard, and they don't want to downplay that and say, well, this is stupid and this is pointless, because they are working hard to try and make the best vehicle they can per these regulations. It's just lucky or unlucky enough. Obviously, it's a bad situation that we've got this gap, but and it's not the teams that are going to make that decision. They can use their influence to try and sway the FIA to do certain things and make certain propositions as to this is why you need to look in this area to try and fix this problem. I don't think it's unsolvable, and I don't think it's all bad, but they should have been more reasonable with some of these regulations, and they should have foreseen it, because we all kind of did. And as I say, sometimes it looks like a normal race, but sometimes it sure doesn't. And that's when it's like you're looking behind the curtain at that point, right? When you see a car going 20, 30 miles an hour slower, not because it's broken.
Yeah, right. And it's, like Lando saying, there's all of a sudden this power comes out of nowhere. He didn't want to pass Lewis at that point, but the car is just power. He had no choice. He went right around him and then all of a sudden used up his energy, and Lewis passed him right back. And that's literally software controlling the driver at that point. And that's a problem.
Yeah. Yep.
The driver should be the key decision maker on whether he passes or not. Or has the power to do so, et cetera, or how they deploy.
I mean, as I said, there's lots of use hybrids. I love the idea of hybrids. It's they're using up energy that's otherwise wasted, but it should be to add to the performance, not in place of performance, which is what we have right now.
Yeah, exactly. So they've really got a lot of work to do in the 4 or 5 weeks that we have break here, this spring break. Yes, so very frustrated. We argued up front before all of this chaos began. What are you, against safety? And now, after Ollie's crash, is like, okay, well, if we aren't getting them to move on anything else, we're going to start claiming safety, which they should, because it was incredibly unsafe when you're. Right.
But you shouldn't have to get to that point where someone.
You shouldn't.
I mean, he's lucky he's not more hurt.
Yeah,
he really is. That was
for sure. For sure. That was a big shunt. Let's level set the race weekend. First of all, Mercedes dominance. Clearly, they won the first 2 races in 26, 2 finishes with 1-2 finishes in both Australia and China. Obviously, the team to beat. They arrived in Suzuka with a perfect record, a growing constructors lead. They certainly were the team to beat heading into this weekend, and by Friday, they certainly asserted themselves as looking quick as well. McLaren, conversely, they entered this weekend in crisis mode, right? Piastri had failed to start either of the first 2 races, hadn't turned a wheel in anger. He crashed on the reconnaissance lap in Melbourne, then suffered that power unit issue. He got Lando, had a DNS. The root cause of those tied back to the Mercedes powertrain. So that wasn't good. They came in under enormous pressure to deliver this weekend, to really kind of figure out where their car was, given all the challenges they had. And then conversely, you headed into this weekend, and I think a lot of fans are discussing this Red Bull freefall at this point. I think it's hard to argue the fact that Verstappen had scored, just 8 points or so in the first 2 rounds, failed to score in China Sprint and Grand Prix, retired from Chinese Grand Prix, publicly called the new cars anti-racing, and compared energy harvesting to collecting mushrooms in Mario Kart. A lot of people teeing off on Max. Oh, he's just upset because he didn't have a car that's dominant. 2 years ago, when they announced these regulations, he was warning people. I don't think necessarily that's the case. And Max isn't the only one complaining. Lando is complaining. Right. Charles is complaining. Ollie Behrman was complaining. We're talking about younger and older drivers, a real mix. Carlos Sainz complaining. Most of the drivers are complaining, and some of them more terse than what Max was saying. So hard to blame that on Max, but it's clear Red Bull's squarely running mid-pack now, and that's difficult. And then finally, we headed into this weekend, and kind of the FIA threw a bit of a bone to them and over the regulation safety concerns, and drivers have been basically warning since preseason testing about the dangerousness of speed differentiation. Let me try this in English. Speed differentials. The speed differentials caused by the energy deployment, and we saw that with Ollie and Franco Colapinto.
Right.
So they threw him a bone and changed the regulation for qualifying, but left them the way they were for the race. And Carlos was pretty flummoxed as why they would do that. So now the FIA has responded. We'll get into that. They've said, well, finally you hit them. It's cost, sustainability, or safety. I've been saying this for 10 years now. The FIA has 3 clubs. They'll beat you with one of the 3. And so it's cost. Well, new hybrids come out. They don't care about cost anymore, right? Because if they did, we wouldn't be doing these power units because they're astronomically expensive. It's sustainability. That's the club they use to hammer these through. But now the drivers are using their own medicine and clubbing them with the safety club, and so they had to pay that some lip service, and they put out a statement that they're going to review for safety, which they should.
Yeah.
The race itself, Paul, dry race, 53 laps. It really kind of turned on one moment, and it was at that start. Piastri still the lead start. Both Mercedes dropped back. He genuinely held Russell at bay for the opening stint. Then on lap 22, you had Behrman's 50G crash at Spoon. That brought out the safety car right in the middle of the pit stop sequence, which was horrible timing for George Russell. Antonelli had not yet pitted. He was able to stop and get that 10 seconds or so free stop, if you will. Russell had just pitted a lap earlier, and that worked against him. And then they had a lot of racing fighting behind him. You had Leclerc and his fight with Hamilton, and then fending off Russell for the podium. Gasly holding off Verstappen for 25 laps. Norris picking off Hamilton. Some decent racing back there. 2 retirements, Ollie Behrman and Lance Stroll. And Antonelli, Paul, became the youngest championship leader,
yes,
in Formula One. Yes, the youngest championship leader in Formula One.
As you say, lots of stuff happens. We talked about it before we came on here. It's interesting how the race becomes more consistent in that second half.
Yeah,
there's in the beginning, the first 10 laps is just. People have such different deployments. All our little push to pass buttons, plus, and everyone's trying to figure it out. They're either starting with not enough, or they're just trying to figure out how to use it properly at the track. They do get a lot of practice, so you think they'd have fine tuned it a little bit. But it seems like as the race goes on, everyone becomes a bit more even, and the racing becomes a bit more natural. So to speak.
It does. And I was thinking, you're right. We were talking about this for the podcast. And I was thinking you got 22 cars at the beginning, everybody deploying and harvesting in different areas in context of where they are in the race. If they're running 17th, you're going to have different harvest deploy thing trying to get around Ocon than you might running at the sharp end if you're Antonelli or Piastri or whatever. And so you get all this disparity. And then the software is learning and redeploying. And then it seems like the software is controlling that. And all of a sudden, mid-race, like you said, Paul, you brought this up. And I just, when you said that before the podcast, I thought, that's absolutely true. Because come mid-race, seems like everybody's kind of harvesting and deploying kind of around the same area. And is it a combination of, the beginning of 22 cars using it the way they would in context of where they are. And then once that starts to spread out a little bit, at that point, is it everybody kind of learning how to use these new power units because these are the first times they've been used on these tracks. So it takes them a little bit to figure that out. Not in testing, they obviously know, but in anger, they're using it a little different. Things are always different. And always different. Yeah. So I think it's probably a combination of all the above,
Yeah. I wonder if they have an auto-learn factor on the cars.
Does. Yeah, they said it does. The software does learn, yeah. And they said
I didn't
that's
know if there was like 5 billion engineers just going through all these scenarios and go map 7, map 92, which is going to change change everything.
Yeah, the drivers are saying that's why you got to be careful about doing anything extraordinary, because the system will take that on board as that's the way you're doing it, and then you don't want to do it a few laps later,
Gotcha.
Which is I would see from a driver perspective very difficult to drive around.
Right, and anti-natural ability. Right?
Yeah,
you do different things for different reasons around the lap.
For
But you
sure.
you don't want to break the algorithm that's getting the most out of the car. So maybe it's the auto learns on all the cars are just kind of even things out, and they're ultimately coming to maybe the same point, which is what we talked about before this all started. Was as the races come on, they're going to be a lot closer to the optimum from lap one of every practice, but every track is so different. There's still a lot there. If we had the same rules going back next year, God hope we don't. But if we did, then I think they would be a lot closer from the very beginning of the weekends. But till now, every race is just a whole new book of data, really. Yeah,
it is. And I don't want to give the impression that the people at the teams writing code and software and algorithms for the software aren't smart enough to understand a one-off versus a repeatable driving behavior versus a one-off behavior. And I'm sure they do. It's not like, one time I braked later because I was taking a different line because there was a car here, and so now, the software is going to want to do that every time. I'm sure the one-offs, they're like anything else. You're searching for patterns, right? And repeatable driving behavior, which is probably analyzed on its efficacy and how quick that is, and then tries to recalibrate to deploy to complement, that repeated driving behavior. But I'm sure they've thought about all that. But
and it's always been a kind of a bugbear with me, even before this systems, with all the automatic systems on the cars, the brake bias and all this kind of stuff, where if you put it back into the driver's hands, you see a lot of different things going on. And I know they're always trying to figure out how to make passing happen. Well, you have to have mistakes or see differences in driving style to see different things happen on the track. And if you put more things in the driver's hands rather than just automatically change diffs at this corner and that corner, and et cetera, leave things a bit more fixed, then and allow the driver to make those adjustments with his hands and feet,
Yeah, I agree with that. It seems more organic, but I think that's kind of what we liked for decades about this.
Yeah.
When you left shift points in Senna's hands, clutch points, braking points, bias, those kind of things, you'll see some pretty creative usage of that tool contextually during the race and where he would apply it. Same for Schumacher or anyone else. And if you automate all of that, it kind of is what it is, right?
Right, exactly.
So let's talk about the race. We'll start off sharp in with Mercedes, Kimi Antonelli, P1, George Russell, P4. Mercedes maintained their 100% win rate in 2026, their third consecutive victory. But this is the first race they did not have a 1-2 finish, so there's that. Antonelli's win was really aided by the safety car for sure. His second stint pace was devastating and showed that the car remains the real class of the field. The team acknowledges that competitors are closing in this weekend, though. I think even George and Toto had said that they're closed in a little bit. And Andrew Shovlin revealed that there were two specific technical problems that hurt Russell: a harvesting limit issue at the restart and a software bug that triggered an unintended super clip, both of which cost him position at critical moments. And Toto says they need to work better on their race starts. Let's start with Kimi, Paul. P1, started on pole, had a poor getaway, just like wheel spin, right?
Right, yeah.
On that replay, you could see the smoke coming off those rear wheels, which was interesting. It dropped him from to sixth by turn one. He recovered to fifth by lap 2, climbed to second by lap 11 through overtakes on Hamilton, Norris, and an attempt on Leclerc. He was the last of the front runners to box, and the safety car on lap 22 gifted him a free stop from the lead. From the restart, which we were saying before the podcast, when Antonelli didn't box to cover McLaren, it sends a message. They don't need to cover. We got pace in hand, and they know it. From the restart, his pace was just fantastic. He built a 13-second winning margin, no real threat from that point on. He became the youngest championship leader at 19 years old. And has now back-to-back wins, Paul. He said he needs to improve his starts, though. He did admit that. And he's 9 points over George Russell. My praise of Kimi is real, Paul.
It is real. And it scores you points in the fantasy league, too.
It did. It
Were you like
did.
number one for this race or something in the fantasy?
Yeah, I was. I jumped 17 positions with this
Look
race.
at you.
I know. It was astounding.
Overtake mode. Yeah.
It was. I super clipped this
You
weekend.
sure did. Yeah. That's impressive.
Yeah, it was good.
But George let me down.
I know. Yeah, I know. He let me down too. He didn't finish where I expected him. I thought he was going to be 1-2, but
Yeah.
But I did have Piastri there, so
Very good. Well done.
that was good.
Yeah.
So a great race from Kimi.
Yeah.
Did he drive like a future champion in your mind, Paul?
Yeah, I think he's getting it all together, isn't he?
He is.
And yeah, his car has the superiority, but
Indeed.
in most cases, every world champion has the superior car.
Yep.
It's about executing and putting yourself in the right position. And, there's no doubt George was a little compromised, so that helped him a lot.
Yeah.
And obviously with the pit stop, that also got him out in front of everybody. He didn't have to fight his way through. But as we saw early in the race, he was able to fight his way through anyway.
Right.
So even for a lackluster start, he was making very good progress.
Yeah, he was.
And it's interesting right now because him and George haven't had to go toe-to-toe for different reasons. I'm just looking forward to the time when they are both out in front fighting tooth and nail. That's going to be when Toto really has to, work for keeping the team harmony together, because I don't think George was going to be too happy with Kimi being ahead in the championship. So, but
Yeah, I don't think so either.
no.
Yeah, George finished down in P4, suffered a poor start just like Kimi did, dropped from second to fourth, recovered, though, real well, overtaking Norris and Leclerc to run second by lap 4, pressured Piastri for the lead and briefly held it before Piastri retook P1 into turn 1. He pitted on lap 22, just one lap before the safety car was deployed, which was catastrophic timing for him.
Yeah.
Some people win, some people lose, and he lost out. He lost 2 positions at the restart due to a harvesting limit and then the software superclip bug, neither of which were in his control. That was just, it is what it is. And he fought really a great late battle with Leclerc for the podium. Couldn't find a way past him. He drops him first to second in the championship. Certainly very frustrated on the radio. You could tell. And it's a bit of a pattern of bad luck that, with hopefully in his case, hopefully not, but it could define a little bit of his title challenge in Mercedes if he doesn't resolve that bad luck issue. But yeah, not happy camper coming out of this weekend.
No, and he was originally already compromised, right? Because they did something with the rear
Qualifying.
suspension, the setup change that didn't work out, and you're in Parc Fermé at that point, so you have to take that change to the race unless you want to start from pit lane, and he definitely didn't want to do that. And yeah, it was bad luck with the pit stop, but it wasn't devastating. That was devastating was the restart and him having trouble again, which is what we had at China, correct? It's like, Kimi was out front, even if the Mercedes can't switch everything on in those first couple laps in the restart. If you're out front, you can maybe give yourself a bit more of a margin so it doesn't cause you positions. But with George being back there, with everybody nose to tail, just that slight deficit in that restart pace for whatever reason, just caused him to lose position, and then he was just fighting himself the whole way through, and then obviously very vulnerable under that super clipping issue, inadvertent super clipping issue that he just basically every time it happened he lost a position, and so he was kind of lucky to get fourth, lucky to maybe even finish the race. I'm not sure all the gremlins were going on there, but he definitely was severely compromised through the whole weekend from qualifying on. So maybe damage limitation. I know he probably doesn't think of it that way, but it could have been worse. So he's just got to keep fighting. That's all.
He could have been. I mean, there's certainly debate about why they boxed him there, and then the safety car. Nobody knows when the safety car is going to come out, so it's not Mercedes' fault. He was on the radio wanting to box.
Right.
Although Paul, I guess maybe if you wanted to try to be, cheeky about it, you could say, well, I mean, I know you wanted to box, but the reality of it is they had Bottas out there on hards, and you could tell that it took 3 or more laps for those hards to get in the window.
Undercut deal going on.
There wasn't, and they probably didn't need to box him, given it takes 3 laps to get up. So,
right,
in hindsight, that's 20/20 vision, but that's,
and when you're driving the fastest car on the grid right now,
exactly,
it doesn't make
maybe
sense,
not the best call. Maybe reacting to him trying to make something happen, anything happen. I get it, but and that's just Monday morning quarterbacking. But that's let's see. Talk about McLaren. Oscar Piastri P2, Lando Norris P5. Transformative weekend for McLaren, really, after the humiliation of a dual DNS in China. But they got both cars to the finish, delivered a podium and 28 championship points. That's a huge gain for them. Andrea Steller called it encouraging, but he was very clear-eyed that McLaren still has a fundamental chassis deficit and needs several tenths of cornering grip to be a genuine victory contenders. He confirmed upgrades are targeted for the upcoming races. The Mercedes power unit worked without issue for the first time in 2026. That's a major step forward. And the Suzuka characteristics with its emphasis on straight line speed, that kind of suited their package a little bit. Probably why Piastri was in the mix and up front, also with the great start. So talking about him, he had a fantastic start from third on the grid, took the lead into turn 1, held Russell at bay for the entire first stint, even pulling away at times, which was hugely impressive against a Mercedes, if I'm honest. He pitted before the safety car, which robbed him of what might have been, maybe, fingers crossed, a genuine shot at a possible victory. I'm being complimentary there. His total composure after the 2 consecutive non-starts. He shows up calm, cool, collected. His first race start, his first race, boom, podium. It's a great job.
It was.
Stella described him as showing the strongest version of himself since he started in Formula One, which is high praise.
Wow, that's just a bit of hot air, really, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I saw
it's my best race ever. It's like,
it's my best race.
Some pretty good races. I don't know. Yeah. But they're just trying to G him up a little bit. It was a really good run by him. And maybe if Kimi was behind him, it would have been a bit harder because George obviously wasn't running it with 100% of what that car could be. But it's. What's impressive is that he has had no race running, so he hasn't had the experience of working with these systems and knowing how they work, positive and negative. Maybe it's better to be outside looking in. I don't know if you can see more from the outside in, but he definitely seemed to have them. He had timed everything perfectly to be able to keep George behind because
he did. From
what we believe, the Mercedes is the fastest car. So how does a slower car keep someone behind you with these new rules? And so whatever he was doing in the car was pretty smart and clever, and it's hard to count against him actually winning the race. I mean, we wouldn't probably bet for it, but I certainly wouldn't bet against him being able to do it because of what he did with the Mercedes behind him for that long a time.
I agree. You could argue, well, he'd driven in testing and all that. That's true, but he hadn't really used until this weekend, he'd not used those systems in anger, in a race. And that's a different thing than testing. So, what a fabulous job. What a fabulous weekend for Oscar. I couldn't be more happy for him. It was a great result. Lando wasn't as great, but it wasn't miserable. It could have been worse. He had a disrupted practice weekend, had a hydraulic leak in FP2. running, made positions at the start, climbing to third briefly before being passed by Russell and then Antonelli. He dropped off the leading pace in the first stint, but then he showed a real improved performance on the hard tire in the second stint, I thought,
Right.
And really started coming on strong, fought a real compelling battle with Hamilton, got around Hamilton in the closing laps, got up into P5, made that pass stick on the penultimate lap. And he said that, they'd made significant progress with the power unit deployment, but he was still very critical of this racing and these regulations after the race. He said they're just yo-yoing. He goes, just silly. So,
Yes. But, obviously double points for McLaren. That's good. They're going to have a lot of upgrades. What's interesting is going to be the upgrades for the next race because we have so much time.
Yeah, right.
This is make hay while the sun shines time for all these teams who have deficits to try and bring in those upgrades. And if they're lacking a little performance in the corners, then we know McLaren can develop very well.
Yep.
The next race can be interesting to see if there's a lot more equalization in pace. And going back to Mercedes, actually, with that in mind, is that if they do change the rules, is this going to take away Mercedes' advantage
right
across the board? I don't know. I doubt it because it's probably still a good car. But if they change the rules with how much super clipping, how much harvesting, how much deployment you can do, maybe that's been their advantage is they've been able to do more.
Right.
And from what I hear, that's kind of what it is. So, it's so McLaren have some room to make up so Norris.
I wouldn't put it past them at all, Paul. As a matter of fact, I think if you're a Ferrari fan, which I am, you have reason to be concerned because McLaren will develop this car. They will get on top of this. We know they can. There's some wickedly smart men and women in Woking that will get on top of this. The point of that matter that you brought up, Paul, is if they change the regulations and it starts to neuter Mercedes' pace advantage in small ways, even if they're incremental gains by McLaren, I think Ferrari has a tiger by its tail in McLaren. And we saw shades of that this weekend, right, with where Piastri finished ahead of Leclerc. So I think their real battle, I think Zach said heading into this race, they didn't think the battle was with Mercedes, but they definitely felt like their battle was with Ferrari, and I think it's only going to get more fierce. And you could end up seeing Ferrari third in the championship if Ferrari doesn't develop at the kind of performance pace that McLaren does.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
Ferrari, Charles Leclerc P3, Lewis Hamilton P6. Their third consecutive podium keeps them relevant in the constructors' fight. This is a race really kind of two halves for the team. Leclerc had was superb really all day. Hamilton's second stint collapsed. Raised kind of a genuine question about the battery management consistency within the team. I think Fred identified straight line performance as a known deficit and acknowledged that once a driver loses their overtake mode, the pace drops off significantly and a train forms. Ferrari sits second in the constructors' points, 45 behind Mercedes and just 34 ahead of McLaren. So it's going to be very tight for them. Let's start at the sharper end with Charles. Made a strong start, Paul, jumped from fourth to second before being repassed by Russell. He pitted on lap 18, which was fractionally too early to benefit from the safety car. Found himself behind Hamilton after the safety car reshuffle and had to fight past his own teammate at that point. Delivered one of the, in my opinion, is one of the moves of the race, using his overtake mode to pass Hamilton into turn one on lap 42 after several previous attempts, and then defended brilliantly against Russell for the final 11 laps, including a stunning move on the outside at turn one with 2 laps to go to reclaim third. His racecraft, I just thought, was exceptional, and his tire management, really, to be honest with you. His pace, when it mattered most, like you said, in that second half of the race, is really kind of where you saw Charles come unsung. Yeah,
he seems to work these regulations maybe better than most, I would say. where the Ferrari is strong at the beginning of the race, he tries to make the most of that. But then he definitely, in all those moves we saw out on the track, he seems to be able to time everything really perfectly. And we saw a couple of them didn't quite pull off, mainly against his teammate, but he managed to get it in the end. And I think he made about 3 passes on the outside of turn 1, and not so dramatic as some of these easy passes where they're basically just pulling out and they've got like 20 horsepower over everybody.
Yeah, right.
They tuck back in, but he had to work for it a little bit and time it perfectly and just eke out just that little bit of extra to be able to get his nose ahead and make that, turn into turn 1 when, there's probably a car beside you. And so you had to hope that they gave you a little bit of room, because we've seen some pretty hellacious crashes there when someone doesn't. So I think, these, for whatever reason, Charles has his head around the rules as they stand right now, and he really has done a really good job both in racing other people and the starts and just general pace. So not that Hamilton hasn't been doing great, but
how about his save at Spoon?
Oh my goodness! and it's true. You see the replay, and you're like, well, it didn't look that much, but when you saw it live, my heart was in my mouth. I'm like, holy, because you've got to think how fast you're going at that point, and he's just super quick hands. I mean, he's lost a couple of tenths, but he could have lost a whole lot more than that.
Oh yeah,
quick work of that. Yeah,
it was a great save. It really was. Excuse me. I went to a trade show last week and came home with some sort of
that's not
virus or something, so I'm a little under the weather. I apologize. I just came home and I was like,
oh, Jesus.
Thank you, trade shows. Let's see, Lewis, P6, benefit from the safety car. Emerged in 3rd position without having pitted before the neutralization. Was finally, he initially, like I said, he was initially competitive in the second stint, holding Leclerc and Russell behind him, but then his pace just, hit a cliff. In the final 15 laps, and he lost positions to Leclerc, Russell, and ultimately Norris. It was investigated for gaining advantage in turn 16. Stewart said no big deal. Admitted post-race that he simply did not have the pace to compete and said the team needs to understand why. I kind of feel like Vassar's comment about losing overtake mode and everything becoming more difficult was kind of clearly aimed at explaining Hamilton's struggle without actually naming Hamilton or publicly shaming him, but I think that's kind of what he was alluding to.
Yeah, so saying overtake mode was keeping him in the hunt, and as soon as that dropped off, he didn't have that ultimate pace.
Yeah,
maybe so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. But, P6, it's not the end of the world. Far better than where he was last year, so that's good. Well, this was my feel-good story heading into this season. If you caught our preseason show, I was all amped up about Alpine and a Mercedes engine, and man, I thought this could be Pierre Gasly's year. So far, I'm doing okay. I ran out of money on the fantasy GP though, and couldn't pick Pierre or the Alpine. I wanted to, but I couldn't.
I do have the Alpine on mine, so that's
good for you. I wanted it, but I didn't get it. Pierre, P7, Franco Colapinto, P16, Alpine, quiet emergence as the 4th quickest team in 2026. Do you think he'd be saying that last year?
Not really.
I know you didn't. The hate level that you have for Alpine, Paul.
It's obvious.
Pierre now second, or now scored points in all 3 races. I'm sorry, and beating both Red Bulls, and again confirms that Alpine are a genuine midfield force this season, which is great. The big question is, can they hold on to that during development against Red Bull and others? Probably not so great. Flavio noted that Suzuka's result confirms the gains that they made, that we made in Shanghai, that the Alpine are in the mix with the Red Bull as the 4th quickest car currently. The Mercedes Power Unit partnership appears to be paying dividends. Again, I would caution myself, chief among them, about getting too amped up about Alpine, because I think when it comes down to the development war, during the season, I think this is where they could drift backwards. But that's why you and I said up front, about Cadillac, Alpine, and others, and Audi. You have to make hay when the sun shines. And while everybody's fumbling around trying to figure it out, this is where you score points, and they're doing so. Pierre finished in P7, qualified strong 7th, maintained that position for the first stint, pitted under the safety car to hold position, spent the entire second half of the race defending against Max Verstappen, which I think anyone on that grid would tell you that's not easy to do. It was one of the more compelling duels of the race in my mind. Verstappen briefly got past. Gasly reclaimed the position on the very next lap. Finished just 0.3 seconds, 0.3 ahead of Verstappen at the flag. Even Max came on the radio and said, wow, these Alpines have some serious pace. 3 consecutive points finish. Excellent return for Alpine early in the season, and I couldn't be happier for him.
Yeah, no, it's great. We know Gasly can do the job if the car's there.
For sure.
Never doubted that.
Nope.
But, you can't discount the fact they got a Mercedes in the back. What's interesting is that the Alpine team have never used an outsourced engine.
Right.
Because they've always done it internally. So just the process you go through and logistics of working with an outside manufacturer for your engine program is a learned thing. And it can always be better, but maybe the negative of the Renault engine they were getting far outweighed by the performance of the Mercedes, and getting used to Bob and Joe from Mercedes being there in the corner of the room, giving you some insight. Right? It's customer programs are interesting because they're supported by a manufacturer in Formula One, certainly, that you're racing against. But it's
a little different for you and the Valkyrie with the Cosworth, right?
Different. Very, very different. We're not competing against anybody. It's all one team. And learning that and knowing that you're not necessarily going to get the latest and greatest before, as the Mercedes team do. They're always going to get the latest and greatest. It's just kind of a known factor. You just hope that factor isn't that large. But it is probably night and day dealing with that depth of engineering in the Mercedes side rather than what they were dealing with the Renault, which is always a deficit to the whole grid. So good for Gasly. You still have to have a decent car. Certainly need a nice, light, nimble car to do it. And Gasly has that. Colapinto hasn't quite, or at least this time, didn't quite, wasn't able to match it. But he did from the last race. So I think overall it's definitely a clue that the chassis is good, and it's not just Gasly just manning up and just pulling the car up on his back,
Right. And I think also, Colapinto, quieter race for him back in the midfield, directly involved in the Behrman incident. Stewards ruled no further action, and I think Haas was quick to point out it wasn't really Franco's fault.
No.
A lot of people have said that he moved left, and it was, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, he did, but it's kind of his right to do it.
Yeah.
But with the disparity in speed is probably not the proper thing to do, I would say. But these drivers are learning all these things on site in the Grand Prix. It's kind of like how you race in an oval, way different than you do a road course, because the ramifications are massive. You can't just start chopping people's nose off at the Indy 500 because it's just going to be an hellacious mess, right? So you have to have a little restraint in your aggressive elbows out manner if you normally have that kind of driving style, and on road course you can do it a bit harder. So I think Colapinto, he did move out a little bit because he didn't want to make it easy, but the disparity in speed was massive, and that was really the main factor.
Yeah, I think so too. Look, he got caught out by the safety car, so just like George and everybody else. That kind of put paid to his race. And I think Briatore's right. I think his Saturday qualifying kind of put him on the back foot too. So, very much kind of like George, qualifying with the changes they made to his car. So Colapinto, not the best weekend, not the worst weekend either, although P16 isn't anything to write home about. But I think his previous performance shows that he's capable of delivering in this chassis and engine combination. Just didn't play out in Suzuka for him. Red Bull, Max in P8, Isaac Hadjar in P12, their decline in the 2026 regulation at this point, Paul, is kind of impossible to ignore. The team that dominated in 2023 won 4 consecutive championships with Verstappen as firmly midfield. Laurent Mekies said that, it's not just one area we can pinpoint, that the problems span multiple areas of the car. And Verstappen, what does he have? 13, 14-ish points, somewhere around there, 58 behind championship leader. So very difficult times for Red Bull. Max finished in P8, Paul, made a strong start from P11, gained some positions on the opening lap, passed Hadjar, got stuck behind Gasly for the entire second half of the race, unable to make a pass stick, despite 25 laps of trying. The car's battery deployment issues were evident. He reported having no battery on the main straight and when trying to overtake, which is a fundamental problem when the regulations demand electrical power for passing. So that was an issue. He admitted after the race the Red Bulls are just midfield battle, and his frustration basically, he said, has evolved from anger to something closer to resignation. And in my mind, I think that's more concerning.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's obviously has other things he can do and wants to do. So, yeah. I mean, I know there's a lot of speculation. Oh, he's going to quit. I don't know. And is he quitting just because the car's not competitive? I don't know that either. I don't think it's because he doesn't have a competitive car. The detractors from Max say, "Oh, he's just a baby because he's not in the best car." That's not. If you've watched Max at all, that's not it. He spent the sharp end of his burgeoning F1 career not in the best car. But he's used to winning now.
He is used to winning now, and he's won a lot of titles. But I think these regulations, he said 2 years ago, were a hot mess, and now he's seeing it play out, and he's lost interest. I mean, Charles Leclerc, who you mentioned, seems to do better than most with these new systems, was very critical of it when he got out of the car. As critical as Max was, if not more so. So and
it probably is more frustrating that you have called it that from that long ago, and yet they pushed through and didn't really change the format and everything. But one thing to remember is, I know it's Red Bull, but it's Red Bull with their first ever engine program.
Correct.
And should you right side the expectations? We always expect Red Bull to be super competitive, but they're up against a Mercedes engine program that's been running for 20 years.
Exactly.
Ferrari been running
forever.
All these, forever. And to come out, you're the new kid on the block. They're certainly the best of the new engine programs.
Yeah.
But you're just the expectation of how Red Bull should be and where it should be on the grid. Rightfully so. It's disappointing if you're a Red Bull fan or a Max Verstappen fan.
Yeah, for sure.
But you got to go in there with your eyes open, honestly, when these things go, and it's got to be a long-term program. And probably a bit too much to expect to come out and be equal to a Mercedes engine program year one.
I think that's a good shout, Paul, because I think, this is a burgeoning engine program. I would say that the Red Bull powertrain group has absolutely hit it out of the park on what they've delivered to be as competitive as it is. Yes, I'm sure it can improve. I would warn that it better improve, because I think Audi is going to be a serious contender here, looking at what they brought out of the box this year.
Yeah.
Red Bull's got stiff competition. Not only Ferrari and Mercedes, that's a given, but I think Audi is going to be a threat. And so we'll see. But, it'll be difficult. Isaac, P12, not a great race. Outqualified Verstappen, though, second time in 3 races, made it to Q3, lost position at the start, dropped from 8th to 11th, pitted 2 laps for the safety car, which was just kind of a poor timing issue, cost him several places. Couldn't really recover through the field, finished 4 places behind Verstappen, despite starting 3 places ahead, so a bit of a ragged weekend. He, too, equally very critical of the regulations. Battery deployment was a major problem for him as well. Did you see that video I saw floating around the in-car communication where you're like, okay, look, if you use the boost button and then you hit throttle, you can't take your foot off the throttle. And he was like, what? It was like, huh? What?
You're telling me this now?
Yeah. It was like, okay, wait a minute. This is like a game of Twister at 180 miles an hour, you know?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Complicated stuff.
So difficult weekend for Isaac.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I mean, he lost it pretty quick. I don't know if he gave up that position to Max on purpose, but it didn't seem like he was fighting it hard, and doesn't seem to not ever fight hard. But he definitely had a good qualifying spot, but went backwards, and Max just kind of drove around him, and on he went, and he did struggle to even fight it into the points, which he ended up not getting to. So I wonder if somebody gave him some good advice before he went into this season that your real competition isn't to beat Max like all the other drivers that came for you. Your real competition is to be the best driver you can be for Red Bull in scoring points. You do that, and you will be in good stead. The time, the pace, the racecraft, that'll all come. But don't go in there thinking that, all right, game number one is to beat Max, because you're not gonna, right? Right.
And so, to your point, right-sizing the expectation, taking that pressure off him, which Lawson didn't have off of him, or Gasly, or Albon. Everybody was expected, or Perez, to come in and beat Max. And perhaps Isaac said, that's not my measuring stick as my first season at Red Bull, you know? Yeah. And hopefully he right-sized those expectations, so... Yeah. Speaking of Lawson, Paul Racing Bulls, Liam in P9, Arvid Lindblad P14, scored points in every race in 2026. That's great, solid achievement for the team. Who's
with
often
the same engine.
Who's often overshadowed by Red Bull, the parent team. Alan Permain confirmed upgrades are planned for Miami. He's very satisfied with that, sung the praises of Lawson. The safety car hurt Lindblad. We'll start with Liam in P9. The team rebalanced his car overnight after issues on Saturday, and the adjustments really did seem to work. He benefited from the safety car timing to jump into the points, and defended his position well against Ocon in the closing laps to hold ninth, which was great. It's his third point scoring finish in the last two races, counting the sprint. It's good momentum for Leon, and I'm glad to see that. I think Alan Permain said that, he spent time with Liam and explained, your F1 career is not over. So don't come back to this team thinking, oh, well, it didn't work at Red Bull, my career is over. He said, Alex Albon has a great career in Formula One. Pierre Gasly has a great career in Formula One. Sergio Perez back in Formula One. So this isn't game over. And so get that out of your mind and reset it and start forging a career in Formula One.
Yep. Maybe lower your expectations of being the world champion to a degree, right? But you can still be very useful. What two people would you like to see battle in Formula One together? Lawson and Ocon. Two guys. They got more elbows out than they do hands in the car.
I know.
But, and I didn't really see that battle, but I bet it was pretty feisty. And Lawson, obviously, he did jump a lot of cars in that favourable pit stop and kind of worked his way back a little bit, but happy he was able to keep Ocon behind him. That's probably a very positive step, because that guy is about as easy to race as Lawson is easy to race.
Yeah, right. Yeah. They both have very sharp elbows. Yeah. Arvid running P10 first stint, impressive position for the rookie, and then pitted before the safety car. That dropped him back down to 14. Pretty much ended his points hopes at that point, Paul. Notably knocked Verstappen out of qualifying Q2, though. That was exciting to get into Q2. That was a good showing from him. Genuine pace. I think he's acquitting himself very well, and while he wasn't up in the points this race, I can't say that it was a miserable race for him. I think he did all right.
No, I don't think Hadjar was a big fan of his, though. He was fighting with Hadjar, right? And then ended up getting a warning penalty for moving under braking, all that kind of stuff. So he doesn't give positions lightly to anyone, including people within the Red Bull organization. I'm not sure that's the best move for him. and we've seen him make a couple of mistakes, but it's tough to throw a young guy into Formula One and not expect him to try and show everything he's got every time. And you don't want to be the driver that lays over for everybody. If they've got a Red Bull sticker on him, and he'll fight Verstappen, he'll fight Agile, he'll fight Lawson for that matter.
Yeah, right.
That's good, but don't make it a detriment to your overall finishing position. And being a part of the Red Bull organization is very favorable if you can, play the game right, so to speak. Maybe it's a different world without helmet there. Maybe it's a bit different, but yeah.
Yeah, could be. It's a good point. Let's talk about Haas. Let's talk about your boy, Esteban Ocon, and P10. Ali, a DNF. Hey, Haas has scored a point in every race in 2026. That's a great achievement for the smallest team in the grid. They set fourth in Constructors' Championship on 18 points. But this race probably be remembered for Haas's Ollie's crash, which was brutal. Start with Esteban, though. P10, strong start for him, ran the top 10 in the first stint, lost position during the safety car period, recovered that, though, to take P10, first points in 2026. He needed that desperately, Paul. Was stuck behind Lawson in the closing laps, couldn't find a way past him. As sharp as his elbows are, he kept it clean, well-executed race, delivered maximum result he felt the car was capable of, and got points. So not a bad weekend for Esteban Ocon, and I would argue it's definitely a weekend he needed.
It is a weekend he needed because he's been in the shadows of Behrman. And even in the race, he wasn't shadowed by Behrman anyway. I think Behrman may have been behind him even for most of the race. So that was a good, solid step for him because... Yeah, he's been definitely 2 steps behind Behrman the first couple of races. So. Yeah,
for sure. It's just a tough weekend for Ali. I was just singing his praises the last race review podcast. Qualified down in 18, out in Q1. In the racing Colapinto on the 17th, lap 22, the incident occurred. He was deploying energy boost while Colapinto was harvesting, created a 50 kph delta. I've seen rumors that were double that figure, upwards of converting, between 60, 70 miles an hour difference. That's a lot. But he went into the grass, avoided the slower car, lost control. I don't know, what was he doing, 180-ish, 90-something?
Tough.
Hit the barriers, 50 G impact, limped away. I was worried he broke his ankle. Went to the medical center, confirmed no fractures, just bruised and a contusion on his knee. That's good. Post-race, though, he was very direct, saying drivers had warned the FIA about this exact scenario during the meeting on Friday. The FIA issued a formal statement confirming meetings are scheduled in April to review the energy management regulations. Carlos Sainz, very critical, saying how dangerous this is. They've been warning about it. So you had Ali at first trying to Nico Rosberg the situation, but then over time you got more critical that they had warned him, and Carlos very vocal post-race interviews about this, but thankfully he walked away.
Yeah, I mean, we don't. It should have been pretty obvious that is a negative, and we've seen it on the track, and you're like, whoa, you know? And if you were going that slow with your car broken, you'd be getting a lot of vocal prompting from race control to pull it in and get it out. You're dangerous on track, but this is the rules that are forcing these cars to have that disparity. So race control is probably staying a little mute, but I'm glad. Hey, if this is the instigator, I'm glad he's okay, but you shouldn't have to get to that point to make those, which seems fairly obvious decision to make that adjustment. And
agreed.
As I said, we got 4 weeks to make that adjustment, so let's do it.
Yep. Audi, Hülkenberg P11, Bortoleto in P13 completed their first full race distance with both cars. Had a terrible start. That was tough. Their launch seems to need some work. And both drivers, I think, ran relatively competitive. Nico lost 6 positions to start, fell from P13 to P19, essentially ruined his race. He fought back to the field with some impressive overtaking. His teammate and several other cars that he passed came close to catching Ocon for P10, ran out of laps. And so that kind of put paid to his race. Similar, Gabby qualified impressive 9th, making it to Q3, lost significant positions at the start, benefited from the safety car to climb back into the top 10 briefly, but really lacked the pace to stay there. It's a strong Saturday pace for Gabby, and I really had him in the points in my hope, but didn't happen.
Still a good showing for the team overall, I feel. I mean, this first, as I said, the first 5-lap chaos is just, it's a roulette wheel, whether you're going to get it come off good or bad, but to see them progress back up through the field and to finish that close to the points, I think is very encouraging still. I'm still, very buoyed by the what car they've put together, both car and engine package. So they're the only team that only has, apart from Aston Martin, but that's a whole other story. It doesn't have more than one team running those engines, so all the development and is done on them. So it's still a great run that they should be happy about. Yeah,
I agree. Then to Williams, you've got Carlos Sainz P15, Alex Albon P20. Carlos, it was a good drive. It's just the car serious limitations. Had a good start, benefited from a well-timed pit strategy under the safety car. You thought it should all be there, and it just wasn't. The car, this car has other issues than just weight, and that's clear. Then, like I said, he's very vocal about the Behrman crash after that. And for Albon pole, stuck in traffic, no realistic prospect of points, and they turned that into a test session. So, I feel for him. Yeah, I feel for all of them there, really, because it is hard to turn those cars around. And, maybe it is more than just weight. Maybe they're behind in a few other areas, because you can't say they don't have the right engine in the car. Right. So, everything's internal. They more than anybody, them and Aston more than anybody, need this break to try and catch up somehow and learn from what they put out and see how good an adjustment they can do to try and gain some of that performance back. I mean, where should they be? Probably where Alpine is. Should be. It's got the same engine. And that car was pretty handy last year, so they've obviously had a misstep of direction that they were late to the party, obviously, as we know. I don't know if that's still got a knock-on effect, but they definitely haven't put forth a great car this year, which is obviously disappointing because we're all fans of the team and hoping for the best. Yeah, agreed. Cadillac, not a lot to talk about. Perez in P17, Bottas in P19 got both cars home. That's a milestone for a new team. Beat both Aston Martins and the Williams of Albon, but Alex pitted 6 times, so that wasn't any big feat for Perez. And still struggling with sort of that power unit deployment issue. I think both he and Valtteri, the only driver to start on hards, that was a gamble that didn't quite pay off, lacked pace. But I think both of them said, Paul, that they felt like they'd made some gains at this weekend. I would say they did. I think they have performance gains. They're still maybe at the back, but I think that the gap was a lot shorter. And, they still need to gather data. So I don't know if there's any risk to doing different tire strategy for them. They're just gaining more information, right? So it's a new car, and so they have to learn how this car that they've never had any history on beforehand. It's not like everyone else is like, well, the old chassis did this, and so we kind of changed this to make this happen. Right. They like clean sheet of paper, so they need as much data as they can, and sometimes it may be starting on the wrong tire just to see how the car behaves. I think you're spot on. This team's priority at this point is clearly learning and gathering data.
Yep.
And that's really what they've got to be focused on. It's what they did this weekend. I think they did well. And then finally, Aston Martin, P18 for Fernando Alonso. Stroll had a DNF. Not a great weekend for them. Fernando finished a lap down, but he finished, Paul.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed, and you and I talked about before the podcast, we both looked at on boards with him, and we didn't see him doing this. It wasn't quite that dramatic as we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I think from what I saw in China, it's literally something breaks.
Yeah.
And it just didn't break because in China, it wasn't like that vibration was there the whole time. It was there, and then it wasn't there, and then all of a sudden it was there. And maybe it shakes some other parts apart.
Right.
So it certainly didn't look like a fun car to drive. And listening to the driver pit radio, they're definitely not exactly excited about that. I think the engineer said, "Would you like to know your position, Alonso?" After the race, he was like, "No." Just very despondent over the radio from both sides of the microphone. Boy, do they need a break, and they need something to kind of lift them up, and let's hope they can figure something out.
All right. Let's give away some awards. We usually do that. The first one is one of our favorites. It's Move of the Race, Paul. Who was your Move of the Race?
I'm going to give it to Charles Leclerc's outside turn one. As I said, we spoke about it earlier. He got the timing right. He got the deployment right, and they were never easy passes, but he did manage to make it, and it was just the last split second, just got enough of the nose in front and turned into turn one, which is one of my favorite corners on the track. And so I think Charles just lit up the people at turn one for all those maneuvers during the race.
Yeah. I had Charles Leclerc for his turn one defense on lap 51. It was a great defense. Russell had gotten past in the chicane, but Leclerc immediately fought back. It was a great defense. So that was my favorite. Let's see. Second award. Well, this is self-explanatory. It's the donkey of the race.
We'll do it live.
Oh, yeah.
It's a shitbox.
You got it. Who'd you have donkey of the race, Paul?
I'm giving it to the Super Clip. It's well deserved, and I'd be happy to hand that award as the Super Clip leaves the building.
Yeah. I feel like I gave it the FIA too, the regulatory approach to energy management over there, correcting it for qualifying, but not for the race. I don't know. Yep. I feel like they've got enough data now. They should be able to run some simulations and see where this is going to happen. That was my donkey of the race, and put Ollie in the wall at a 50G crash. That was not good.
Yeah. Nope.
And then finally, we have drive of the race. Oh, yeah.
Yes, I can hear you, Clem Fandango.
Yep.
Get down.
Get in there, Lewis.
So, Paul.
Yes.
Who was your driver of the race?
I'm going to give it to Get In There Oscar.
That's who I gave it to.
Okay, yeah, I think
I gave it to Oscar,
great
too.
Measured race. It didn't, he still got on the podium. Maybe he'd had a better sniff at a race win, but overall, I think he didn't put a foot wrong. Did an incredible job holding off Russell for that long.
Yeah,
and getting the result that he did in the end anyway.
Yeah, I agree. After a nightmare first two rounds, he hadn't turned a wheel in anger yet.
Yeah.
And to come back and damn near win this thing and put it on the podium, it's just a complete performance, in my opinion. Fantastic job. Quick, we've got some mailbag,
You've
Paul.
got mail.
Want to ask you about this. Noisley asked, hi, folks, I'm curious about the Aston Martin vibration issue. Wouldn't this have shown itself on the test rig quite early in the development cycle? I just don't understand how a company with Honda's background is unable to cure this kind of problem, where they're so far behind in development that they just had to throw whatever they had onto the car and hope they could come up with a fix later.
Yeah, who knows?
Let's hope that what they did.
Let's hope they didn't just throw it together. But as we found out, there's a whole new team in there building this engine, and they didn't have a lot of history from the previous engines. So it's kind of like a clean slate engine program nearly again. And then maybe they don't know. We joked about it before the before the podcast that the guys who used to work at Honda that went to the Red Bull program stole the vibration folder.
Right.
Don't do this, do this. And so, I mean, obviously when they're building all these technologies, they have to build them in a certain order, and they don't build them while they're in the car. So maybe they just misjudged the vibration that maybe seemed tolerable, on the dyno, and they do measure those stuff for sure, would not have the ramifications that it did once it was set in the car. It's a good, I mean, they're brilliant people. You're thinking, well, when you attach that lump to the chassis, there's a dampening effect. Mm-hmm. You would normally think, but I'm sure that's it's a transfer of vibrations to the chassis, and you would think they'd have done that math, but somehow they got it wrong. Yeah, it was a lot of new things, and they got it a bit wrong. And we you got to figure with this the biggest change in the rules that I can remember anyway, that someone was going to not get it quite right, and it just seems that they did. Now, it's not an easy fix. The regulations don't allow an easy fix, and I'm not sure it's an easy fix even if there wasn't a regulation for it. Yep. I believe they will get better, but can they fix it for this season? That's a tall order.
It is a tall order. I agree. Great question. All right. That does it for this podcast. That's what we think about the Japanese Grand Prix. But you can tell us what you think by going to theparkformay.com. Share your opinion. Just do it with decorum and civility. As always, if you like the podcast, go to your favorite podcast player and give us a good rating. Share some love. If you watch this podcast, hit subscribe. It costs you absolutely nothing to do that, and it does help us out. Hit subscribe, the bell icon, all that good stuff, the thumbs up or whatever that has on there, but that would appreciate a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters, because you folks get the podcast and the video with no commercials, and that's awesome.
They get the higher quality podcast.
Always get the higher quality
with the longer words. Yeah.
With the longer words, yes. Yeah. Things like hearing Paul say juxtaposition and things like that. And you might even, you might hear Paul say something like
controversy.
I don't know. Yeah, you never know. So anyway, so if you a huge Patreon supporters that have been out there for a long time, we are incredibly grateful. We wouldn't do this podcast without you. Now, we have 5 weeks to go, which means next week we got to find Grace. We'll be back to talk about whatever news we're going to talk about, and I'm sure she's going to have some anecdotal tales on MotoGP, I'm sure. Being that it was the U.S. Grand Prix down at COTA this past weekend. And we'll talk about Formula One and see where it is. And Paul, you get a 5 week break. How about that?
I do. I don't know what I'm going to do with this one.
You got Long Beach coming, right?
I'm going to Long Beach.
You go to Long Beach, right. You guys are out there at the same time IndyCar, right?
Yeah, so we run with IndyCar. So it's a great, if you're anywhere near there, it's one of the best races of the year for a fan experience. It really is. Yeah,
for sure.
All kinds of stuff going on the whole time.
Yeah. If you're out in that neck of the woods, folks, be sure to go to Long Beach and check that out. You got IMSA, you got IndyCar. And on the IMSA, go hunt Paul down and say hi. Yeah. He enjoyed shaking your hands and meeting you guys out there.
I do. There's always a certain few people I always see every year, and it's always fun to see them again.
Yeah, it's great. So anyway, all right. Well, we'll be back next week to do it all over again. Until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
It's not what I feel I've got to prove at all. I don't really want to prove anything. I started as an amateur with no idea or no intention of becoming world champion. I was curious to find out what it was like to drive a car fast, to drive on a certain circuit, to drive a certain